the answer.
Welcome to the Naked Truth Report with your host, truth warrior and mythbuster, Kathleen Wells. The place where we distinguish fact from fiction, where data is used to drive points home, and where Kathleen takes the position that Democrats and black politicians have destroyed black America. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report. Now, your host, Kathleen Wells.
This shock that I got, seeing that young black men could not even work in Harlem, that was a transforming moment for me. It was an epiphany for me, because I had always been of the opinion, I admired Cardinal Mahoney out in California. When he was a young fella, a young priest, he wanted to help everybody, feed them, clothe them, everything. And I picked that spirit up from Mahoney myself. And suddenly I began to see things in a totally different light. One of the really dear to my heart is that illegal immigration is crushing the American black community. It is depriving them of jobs. I told you about my experience in Harlem. It's depriving them of jobs. It's making the black man feel like not like a man. He can't support his family. He can't. And the black man has been in this country for 400 years. My family can't boast that. My father was born in Italy. I'm not as American as the average black person. And we are driving Americans, legal Americans, into poverty because illegals are coming in and taking jobs away from Americans who are legally here, the blacks who've had a long history of building up this country with their physical labor. I think it's terrible. It's terribly immoral. And I'd like the bishop to speak out on that subject and say, look, we have an obligation to our black community. We can't destroy the good just because there's another good that causes evil. We have to choose the good. And the good is to help the members of the black community. That's another one of the immoral aspects of this problem.
That's another immoral aspect of this problem of illegal immigration. I played that last week. That's Father Patrick Basio. His name is B-A-S-C-I-O. I encouraged you. I wanted to play it again because, we have been talking about this issue. I'm sort of like late to the game, if you know what I mean. This is 2017. I'm late to the game. We've been talking about this issue for decades. As I mentioned last week, Terry Anderson was at this radio station in 2000 talking about this issue. I want to welcome you to the Naked Truth Report. I'm your host, Kathleen Wells. We have been talking about this same issue for decades. And nothing is done. In fact, things are getting worse. Things are getting worse, not better. Less voices are being heard. We're in 2017. Now, everyone in the Congressional Black Caucus is pro-illegal immigration, pro-DACA. They were that way back in like the early 2000s. In fact, they were that way. I was just reading this article. I recommend people read it. It's called The Rainbow Coalition Evaporates. The Rainbow Coalition Evaporates from City Journal magazine. This was written in 2018. The author was Stephen Malanga. Stephen Malanga, M-A-L-A-N-G-A. The Rainbow Coalition. This is the thing. I'm researching this issue. And the more you dig into it, the more frustrating it gets. The more depressing it becomes. The more depressing, yes, because people have been talking about this for 10, 20, 30 years. People were talking about the impact of immigration on Black America since the 1800s. Frederick Douglass, in fact, that's written in this article. In the 1870s, Frederick Douglass warned that immigrants were displacing free blacks in the labor market. That's the 1870s. 25 years later, Booker T. Washington exhorted Americans industrialists to cast down your bucket, not among new immigrants, but among the 8 million Negroes. I mean, so you see, so now the problem has even exacerbated, because we're not just talking about immigrants, we're talking about also illegal immigrants, you see. And when you think about, if you know economics 101, if you think about the labor force, naturally, when you add more people to the labor force, there's going to be competition, right? That's just common sense. That's just common sense. So I don't even know why it's a debate. I don't know why it's a debate at all. It's just common sense. But things have gotten worse. And in this article that I'm reading, the Rainbow Coalition evaporates. It sort of goes through this, this was, like I said, it was written in 2008. People have been talking about this issue for a very long time, and nothing is being done. It's getting worse. Things are exacerbated because now not only are we adding more immigrants, but we're adding now illegal immigrants. And in fact, this article says something to the effect that, I think they call it the tsunami of illegal immigration, a tsunami. Can you imagine? But there was one thing that I wanted to mention. What was it? Wait a minute. The influx of, let's see. Let me see. I forgot what it was. Well, I'll say this. Dr. Claude Anderson. Everyone knows Dr. Claude Anderson, I hope, right? We know who Dr. Claude Anderson. I'm going to have him on the show. He says he's the head of the Harvest Institute. This turnabout represents a betrayal of the civil rights movement. Only blacks deserve quotas. When did our government ever exclude immigrants or deny them their constitutional rights as they did African Americans? In other words, in this article, they were talking about the fact that you now have Latinos asking for quotas. They gave an example of a hospital. And back whenever, Latino organizations were complaining that there were not enough Latinos represented as workers at the hospital, and therefore there should be a quota. And so what Dr. Claude Anderson is saying is, why should there be a quota for Latinos? Why that whole quota issue is in direct correlation to the fact that African Americans suffered under Jim Crow, slavery, black codes, and all that stuff. And it was a way to make things better. But now you have Latino groups wanting, and now, so this article was written a long time ago. It was written in 2008. That's not 9 years ago. But people were sounding the alarm. They were sounding the alarm like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Well, look where we are today. Black people have disappeared. When this article was written in 2008, they said blacks were in Los Angeles were 8%. Now we're 6%. Now we don't have any jobs, because I talked about the article in the Los Angeles Times and the article in the Sacramento Bee. Blacks don't have any jobs. We're facing a job crisis. And still you have these folks. Still you have members of the Congressional Black Caucus talking about, oh yeah, we're pro illegal immigration and we're pro DACA. This is what is disturbing. This is what is disturbing to me, because things have not gotten better. I don't know what we're going to do, but I'm going to bring on my guest. My guest is Dr. Carol Swain. She's a professor of law and political science at Vanderbilt University, and she edited and authored the book Debating Immigration. And that book was published in 2007. You see, we're in 2000. So, Carol Swain Dr. Carol Swain was sounding the alarm in 2007. Terry Anderson was sounding the alarm in 2000. And it was that's what I wanted to look at. The transition took place, because Frederick Douglass was sounding the alarm in the 1800s, right? Right? So now, it was during the Civil Rights Act. See, this is how blacks have been betrayed by the Democratic Party and by black politicians. This is how blacks have been betrayed. But I want to bring on my guest, Dr. Carol Swain, who is the author, or she edited the book, edited and contributed to the book that was published in 2007, Debating Immigration. Dr. Carol Swain, thank you for joining me on the Naked Truth Report.
Hey, it's my pleasure, and I should, make it clear that I have taken early retirement from Vanderbilt. So I'm a former Vanderbilt professor and a former Princeton professor.
Okay, you're a former Vanderbilt professor, but you have the knowledge. We're impressed with your book. We're impressed with the fact that you have been focusing on immigration, amongst other things, at least until 2007. And one of the things that you've said, and that I read in the article entitled Illegal Immigration Hurts African Americans, and this was back in, 2007, you wrote this article, or an article was written about that. You said that the voices of Black Americans are being ignored by the Congressional Black Caucus. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yes. And the first time I addressed immigration at all was back in 2002 when I published my book, The New White Nationalism in America. That was an issue that many Americans have cared about for a long time. And I'm talking about Americans more broadly because it's not just blacks who are hurt by illegal immigration. It's also low-skilled whites, legal Latinos, and blacks. And blacks and whites are the groups that are hurt the most. And that's what the new data shows. But in 2007, when I published the edited book, Debating Immigration, I included a chapter on the Congressional Black Caucus because at the time, there were two things going on. One is if you were an immigration restrictionist and Christian, you were being told that you can't be a Christian and support immigration restriction. You had to be open borders. And so I had a chapter in that book that talked about a biblical, pretty much worldview on immigration that recognized the authority of the state. You know, that a nation is kind of like a family, and you're supposed to look after members of your family first above everyone else. And so to the extent that we have low-income blacks and whites that are competing with foreigners, then that's not in the national interest. Their interest should be put above that of outsiders. And then with the Congressional Black Caucus, they have never in recent years stood up for things that I feel help working class blacks. And they sold black people out in 1986 with the Immigration Reform Bill. At that time, Latinos were increasing in number in their districts, and they began to shift and began to support illegal immigration and policies that work counter to the interests of African Americans.
And how can we explain that? What is the rationale for that behavior, that position that
it's pretty simple. Members of Congress want to get reelected. The leftist groups like La Raza and George Soros, he funds, many different liberal groups, and those groups tend to be open borders types of groups. And so it's always money. It always goes back to follow the money.
So basically what we're saying, and I had Robert Whitson on the program a few weeks ago, black politicians, the Congressional Black Caucus, and even Obama have betrayed their constituents, black constituents. Is that accurate?
That's not new. It's always been that. It's always been that way. And very few black members of Congress, have stood up in recent years to support policies that I think are in the interest of African Americans. But my approach, looks at low-skilled, low-wage Americans, where blacks tend to be disproportionately represented. It's not just blacks that are suffering. White people are suffering, too. The elites have sold out both groups when it comes to illegal immigration. They've sold out working-class whites, legal immigrants, as well as blacks.
And what is the end game? What is the end point? What do they want from this open borders? And what does open borders bring specifically?
I mean, for the elites, it brings cheap labor. For corporations, they don't have to pay as much. And so there are people who benefit from a system where wages are kept low, you have surplus labor, and I think that's part of the motivator, but they also benefit from the fact that the groups that won't open borders tend to have lots of money they can donate to campaigns.
Mm-hmm. And, we know that Hillary Clinton was in favor of open borders. She explicitly stated that.
But the bottom line is, again, follow the money. And when you think about the elites, it's not even one political party. Elites in both political parties tend to be more liberal on that type of issue. And they may try to frame it as a humanitarian issue, and they really care about, the people that are suffering and poor in other countries. But the bottom line is the elites are able to afford, the gardeners, the housekeepers, and corporations, to the extent that they hire low-wage, low-skilled workers, then it benefits them. But we also see that black unemployment, as well as the unemployment of other low-wage people, are being affected by technology, in the sense that most businesses, if they can afford machines, they're not going to pay $15 an hour for a person who's low-skilled. They can have a machine that can flip a hamburger and do many of the jobs that the low-skilled workers were doing, and this hurts blacks as well as other people who don't have advanced skills in the labor market.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they say there's a trend where there's going to be a trajectory where we go towards more robotics, and a lot of jobs are going to be phased out and everything. What do you foresee? How do you foresee that being played out into the future? We
see it happening all the time, and it's just even with the Black Caucus and a lot of the liberal Democrats, they push for this higher minimum wage, the $15 an hour job. And corporations are about the business of making money, and some of the people are not worth $15 an hour. And as a consequence, they're being replaced by machines. Machines don't call in sick. Machines don't come in late. Machines are able to do the job, more efficiently. I'm not sure what's going to happen to the people who are unemployed now, or they're working those low-skilled jobs, because it's not clear how the society will be able to accommodate their needs. And there are many people who would rather work. They don't want to be on welfare. They don't want to sit home and wait for a check where you're barely making subsistence. Yet at the same time, the jobs that they could do are, right now, some of them are being held by low-skilled, low-wage foreigners. Others are being filled by machines. And so the whole economy, everything has changed in ways that none of us know what the future is going to look like.
Mm-hmm. And this whole open border policy would be the last thing that would be beneficial.
It doesn't make sense to bring in low-skill, low-wage guest workers, because the guest workers that come in to do those unskilled jobs, we have a surplus of people in America who are unemployed, who could do the low-skilled jobs. And so it doesn't make sense for us to ever, I believe, have the H-2B workers. And this is not the agricultural workers, but those are just hotel workers. Americans do those jobs, and I would argue that there are no jobs that Americans won't take. And even in the area of agriculture, there are places where Americans do those jobs if they're not discriminated against, because sometimes employers discriminate against Americans that want to do agriculture jobs by putting them in circumstances where maybe they're the only ones speaking English, and maybe the working conditions are not great. They are able to get away with more when it comes to inferior working conditions when they're dealing with foreigners. Americans have come to expect, certain types of amenities, such as bathrooms and clean lunchrooms and safety features. So that makes them less attractive to some employers.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I've had Steve Camarado on the program, who's the director of research at the Center for Immigration Studies. He says, you know, he talked about, and also Peter Kirisnow with the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. They talked about the industries that, illegal immigrants take. So it's not just agriculture, it's construction work and service industries and hospitality, things like that. All industries.
It's almost every sector. And we know in the technology, that a lot of engineers or people that are trained on computers are either unemployed or they're making a lot less than they deserve because we bring in so many HB1 workers.
Mm-hmm. So this notion, you know, and you say that it's the elites and the big money folks that want open borders. You know, this goes against the whole notion of what you think.
I mean, you cannot have a nation in open borders because nation states have boundaries,
mm-hmm.
and that's the way it's always been. And so once you start erasing the boundaries, then you no longer have nations.
Mm-hmm. And you say from a spiritual, Christian, or biblical perspective, a sovereignty of a nation is like a family, you know, and you protect the family. Is that right?
I would say that, and I would say that the state, meaning the government, that part of their responsibility is to be the sword bearer and to enforce the laws. And we have created a situation in America where the rule of law means nothing to a lot of, certainly when it comes to immigration,
mm-hmm.
our laws have not been enforced. And I have always argued that it's a slippery slope, that if you stop enforcing the laws in one area, it spills over into other areas. And what's taking place today with Antifa and the lawlessness that we see coming from political groups,
mm-hmm.
I think that it's all part of this whole slip of the nation, and it can be tied back to when you stop enforcing one set of laws, it's going to spill over into other areas, and you have this lawlessness taking place when it comes to the destruction of monuments. And no matter what you think about those monuments, that's someone else's property. It's not the property of people that I don't like it. I'm going to deface it and I'm going to destroy it.
Exactly. In fact, I was listening to one of the interviews that you had. It was uploaded to YouTube, and you were talking. I think you gave the interview with Judge Janine, and you were talking about the definition of the alt-right has been it's a misnomer. It's not the proper definition. You want to elaborate on
right?
that?
Right, and part of my point in that interview is that the media, they've been painting with a broad brush, and and they do that all the time. And so a lot of the individuals that they have made them all white supremacists, that's not what is taking place today. But I think what we really need to be concerned with is lawlessness. And the lawlessness is related to immigration and our failure to enforce laws. The lawlessness is related to Antifa and those groups that are destroying other people's private property, interfering with other people's right to have freedom of speech and freedom of religion.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, I think that the guy, I think his name was Ben Shapiro, he had to pay like someone had to pay $600,000 for him to be able to speak at UC Berkeley. Can you imagine? I went to UC Berkeley.
I've seen it happen, in my sphere, where if you're a conservative speaker, the universities will hike up the price of a room. They'll make you pay for security, and they'll do everything to keep the conservative speakers off campus. And I think it's a violation of the First Amendment. It's unconstitutional. It's a public university. And it's something that, will be pursued and adjudicated in courts because the student groups have support to file lawsuits.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, the other thing that you mentioned about the lawlessness is that I saw some information that indicated like maybe 40 to 50% of these DACA kids have possibly gotten to the program fraudulently. They used some kind of irregularity to get into the program.
I think, that they have encouraged their previous administration, the Obama administration, and their Department of Homeland security that they encourage the unaccompanied minors to come across the border, almost like recruiting them. And then with the DACA programs, they relax the background checks, and you will find that a lot of times within the immigrant communities, they know more information than the average. They know everything. They know that the magic word, if you get caught, is asylum. Ask for asylum. They know what to say to be able to stay and play the system.
Right. There's this entire underground economy. In fact, I'm right here in, Los Angeles, and the head of the California State Legislature, his name is Kevin DeLeon. He said, he stood up proudly and pronounced that, half of his family had false identification, false Social Security, false fake IDs, things of this nature. Can you imagine? When you have mass incarceration of black men for the last 2
You know something, I think that if we would actually enforce our laws and people that are using stolen Social Security numbers, holding them accountable, that it would operate as a deterrent. And again, you can't have a nation and have a system where you're not enforcing the laws of the land, where you have this lawlessness, and it's not fair to citizens, and it is the responsibility of the state to take care of the welfare of the people, and by welfare, we mean their security, their protection, and their well-being.
Exactly. And that's something that Ted Hayes said last week on the show, that it is a responsibility of the president to protect the citizens of America from these illegal invaders.
And this thing about DACA is, they conjure up this image of these innocent little children. And mostly they're not little children, because you can apply up to age 31. And some of them are gang members. We don't know how many are. But the government is not responsible for the fact that that parents brought their children here illegally, knowing that they were doing it at the time. And we say, oh, if they're innocent children, why should they suffer because of their parents? Well, ask that question of the children of people whose parents are in prison because they made a mistake.
Absolutely. We're going to take a break right now. Can you stick with us? And how do you feel about taking a few phone calls?
I'll take a couple, but I can't. Maybe another 10 minutes.
Okay, sounds good. We're going to come back with Dr. Carol Swain, and she's going to take phone calls. Let me give out the call-in number. It's 866-870-5752. That's 866-870-5752. We'll be right back with Dr. Carol Swain. Thank you very much. This is the Naked Truth Report.
It's not too cool to be ridiculed, but you brought this up on yourself.
Larry Elder here. Some people always seem to be on the edge of poor health. Maybe you're one of them. Well, here's a thought. Your gut, your GI tract, is the center of your body's well-being, which is why I take Natron's Healthy Trinity Probiotic. Natron's Healthy Trinity not only helps me feel better, but it helps me maintain better health and immunity by helping my digestive system work better. And Healthy Trinity is by far the freshest, most potent probiotic out there. So start your day with Natron's Healthy Trinity for the next 90 days and see the difference it can make for you. Get your first 30-day supply for free and 2-day free rush shipping. For details, call 800-509-0988. That's 800-509-0988. Or log on to natren.com and use promo code Larry. That's natren.com, natren.com, or tap the AM870 mobile app. Remember, use promo code Larry. Feel better and be healthier. Works for me.
A promise was made. A promise that hit the beaches of Normandy. A covenant that split the skies over Berlin. A vow.
Are you a local business owner? Are you interested in increasing customer counts and store traffic or increasing traffic to your website? If you answered yes, then you need to advertise on the Naked Truth Report. For more information on how to become a sponsor, please reach out to RJ Beaton at 818-517-KRLA. That's 818-517-5752. Or email us at rj@krla870.com. That's rj@krla870.com. Kathleen Wells, the host of the Naked Truth Report, wants to hear from you. Just like our borders, the phone lines, well, they're wide open. Call in at 866-870-KRLA. That's 866-870-5752. 866-870-KRLA.
Welcome back. This is the Naked Truth Report. I'm your host, Kathleen Wells, and we're joined by my guest, Dr. Carol Swain. Why don't we take a call now from Jeanette? Hi, Jeanette. You have a question for
Hello, dears. This topic is so exactly what's happening. I am in Los Angeles. I'm in California. I'm a California native, and we have been blitzed by foreigners, especially in the Hispanic, from El Salvador, Guatemala, Mexico, and everything, and they've just consumed like locusts all of the low-skilled jobs and all of the school slots.
So do you have a question specifically for Dr. Swain, Jeanette?
Yes, Dr. Swain and President Trump, we did everything we could. We prayed and we did everything in our might to get him elected. And the illegal immigration and also that Paris climate bankrupt America deal are two of the main reasons why we elected him.
Well, do you have a question for Dr. Swain? I need a question for Dr. Swain.
Yes, Dr. Swain. How much do you think that all of these millions and millions of people who are here illegally and phony legally have caused the mass incarceration of especially our Black American citizens and also our Caucasian American citizens? Because when a father cannot find work, the entire family falls down.
That's absolutely right. Thank you, Jeanette. Did you get that?
Well, I can say that there's some research I read that when illegal migration increases in a community, that there does seem to be a rise in Black incarceration. Maybe it's true that more crimes get committed, but at the same time, I think that the illegal immigration is a problem. There's research to show that employers prefer foreign workers to blacks and whites, and they believe that they're better workers. And there may be some truth to some of that, because the unemployment problem in the black community is a serious problem. But we do know that among certain groups of blacks, that people don't necessarily have good work habits, that, maybe they have not been socialized to understand the importance of showing up on the job or on time, or, just doing the job. And so I think that everything is really, really complicated. There's a problem in the black community with incarceration. There's a problem that relates to crime, that people make choices to commit crimes. And there's a problem with the work habit. And all of those things, need to be addressed. And we're not going to be able to save everyone, but I do think that we have to focus, particularly, with young people, helping them take responsibilities, because we can't blame everyone for all of our problems. But right now, there is a problem with illegal immigration. It does affect low-skill, low-wage whites and blacks. And there's the perception among employers that the whites and blacks are not as good of workers. And that may be because, as Americans, they have certain expectations about what a job should be like.
Well, the one thing is that, it's reasonable for Black Americans to expect the people that they elect to represent their interests, correct? And if you're
Yeah, it is reasonable, and that has not been necessarily going on for a long time. And when it comes to President Trump, it remains to be seen just what he is going to do. I think that I don't agree that we should carve out DACA and address that separately from immigration reform. I think that we need a immigration reform that's going to look at everything, that's going to look at the people who overstay their visas, because 40% of the people who are here illegally came on a legal visa, and they overstayed that visa. And so those people among the people who are unemployed, that's 40%, almost half. You can build a wall. That's not going to stop the visa overstayers. And when it comes to DACA, the president was right to end the program. I don't think that anything should be done. Congress needs to reform immigration, and they need to look at the needs of all Americans and put those needs first.
Do you have faith in Trump? How should I put this? How do you think this whole DACA business is going to play out?
How do I think it's going to turn out?
Play out. How is it going to play out? How do you know?
I don't know that Congress, the Republicans, are going to necessarily support anything that looks like an amnesty. And what I would like to see play out is that it not be carved out and dealt with separately. I think that if you do bring a remedy that's separate from more comprehensive immigration reform, that if you carve that out, you will never, ever get real immigration reform. Either they're going to do something with DACA, which may be amnesty. If they do that, they're not going to reform all the other areas of immigration that need to be addressed.
So what do you recommend to listeners? What is your advice to listeners? How can they get involved? How can they help to make change?
Right now, I think that the listeners who really care about immigration should be opposing any legislation that deals with DACA that's going to legalize the 800,000 people who are here illegally. 700,000 of them have jobs. We can have 700,000 job openings pretty soon over the next few months just by enforcing the law.
Exactly. That's a beautiful thing. So how, we can have 700,000 new jobs open just by enforcing the law. So, what's the best response to this, emotional plea that we're supposed to feel. They were brought as children. Oh my God. You know, we have to.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of manipulation taking place, and the media is responsible for part of it because they portray DACA as being about these innocent little children that are here and they only want to work hard, and they ignore the fact that they're gang members, that these are people here illegally, and that we as Americans don't bear responsibility for the mistakes their parents made. Right. And that they're American citizens who need jobs. And so, I mean, that's part of it, is not to allow yourself to be manipulated. I think that if you have listeners who care about this issue, and that's why they're listening, then they need to be pressuring their members of Congress to take a stand that reflects the interests of the American people. And the interest of the American people is not in offering amnesty, you know, out of emotion. They need to overhaul immigration and look at how it affects American workers overall.
Exactly. You hear that, folks? You hear that, listeners? Please contact your congresspeople, your representative in the House of Representatives.
And, you know, like, why don't you take a page out of the book of the political left? And I assume that a lot of you, I'm assuming, I don't know this, your listeners are Democrats.
No, there's a conservative station.
Protesting, picketing their offices, demanding from them the way Hispanics and other interest groups do. They need to start demanding what they want.
Exactly.
Make it uncomfortable for the member of Congress who's not representing you.
Exactly. Listeners, please get involved. Start emailing, calling, get groups together and start picketing and marching and so on and so forth. Let your voice be heard, you know. Let them know. You have to get involved. Just talking on Facebook is not enough, folks, right, Mario? So the next
thing,
it's
that social media is not enough. And
that's not enough. You got to get out there.
There's the other thing. If they're not delivering, then you need to find a Republican member of Congress that shares your perspective, and you throw your support to them. Right. You support whoever is delivering what you need as a policy outcome.
That's absolutely right. You know, Miss Dr. Swain, I wanted to touch on this stuff about the Southern Poverty Law Center. I know I looked at some videos and there was a lot of controversy. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Just you know, like in 2009, they targeted me after I criticized them for having mission creep. And the reason I criticized the Southern Poverty Law Center is that they had started going after immigration restrictionists. And they seemed to be systematically at the time taking every group like the Center for Immigration Studies, Numbers USA, Lou Dobbs, everyone that was speaking about illegal immigration, and they were labeling them as haters or hate groups. And I accused them of having mission creep. And that's when an organization starts out with a certain, you know, mission statement and goal. Then they lose their focus and begin getting involved in various other areas. And so I pointed out that they were engaging in mission creep. 6 weeks later, there was an article in my local paper quoting the Southern Poverty Law Center, accusing me of being an apologist for white supremacy. And then the following year, they mentioned my name in the Hate Watch, all because I had endorsed a film about race that they said was bigoted. And it was clear to me that it was retaliation because I had called them out on that mission creep.
So who is the Southern, you know, the question is, who is the Southern Poverty Law Center that they are the arbiter of all things that are hate or not hate? Why do they get
the media created them and empowered them to a large degree. And what's so interesting is that they could not have a more misleading name. They call themselves the Southern Poverty Law Center. They do nothing that relates to poverty. And of the cases that they've taken affecting minorities, I have read that with the financial settlements that the families either got nothing or they got a tiny percentage. All the money went to the Southern, quote, Poverty Law Center. And they're poverty pimps, and they benefit from their name and the belief that they're out there working tirelessly for the poor when the opposite is true.
Right. You hear that, folks? The Southern Poverty Law Center, they're poverty pimps. And in fact, didn't George Clooney just give them like a big donation or something?
Several corporations, because they believe, the corporations and some Americans believe that they are out there fighting hate groups and like in the 1970s when they were first formed, they fought the Klan, they fought neo-Nazis, and those are noble causes. But over the last 10, 15 years, they have just become a leftist group that goes after anyone who disagrees with their far-left Marxist ideological goals. And now they target churches. They target anyone who is not in tune with their view of what the world should look like.
This, there's a big problem going on with our the way things are going in our politics. Everything is sort of like topsy-turvy, left is right, up is down kind of thing. How are we going to get back on track? How are we going to right this ship?
Well, the Bible says you should know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And so I think that it's all about truth. The Southern Poverty Law Center has been exposed. The covers have been pulled back, and we're seeing them for who they really are. And with organizations like the Congressional Black Caucus, we are being able to see, that they're not really representing black people. And so information is being revealed. It's up to the people. You can, the expression lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Right.
There's no reason why black people should be repeatedly voting for politicians that are not representing their interests, not doing anything to make them better off. And at the end of the day, what's affecting America and the rest of the nation is really a spiritual poverty as much as anything else.
A spiritual poverty. How do we remedy that? How do we?
You go back to first things. And part of the first things is, this nation is a nation that was founded on Judeo-Christian values and principles. And in the black community, a lot of our parents and forefathers had success. And it was because they worked hard and they applied biblical principles to their lives. And we have lost that. And our nation has lost it. There's no reason that you can't go back to first things. And,
I always say that the family is the most important institution in society. During the Jim Crow era, we had, 87% two-parent families. Today, we're down to 25%.
I know, and it was all that, quote, progressivism that has taken us back because it really was regressivism as opposed to progressivism.
Absolutely. It's absolute. No one can deny it. Our families have disintegrated. It's the most important institution.
And our kids are idiots. And I mean, I don't know if you read the article about Lipscomb University. The president invited some black students over, and, people are decorating with the cotton balls.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
And so they were traumatized by that. And then at Ole Miss, some black students were traumatized because they saw banana peel.
Can you imagine?
I mean, they are not getting the knowledge and skills they should be getting from colleges and universities to come out and be effective citizens.
That's
and
absolutely
so, I mean,
right.
Parents are sending their kids off to college instead of the kids getting the skills and the knowledge that's going to make them better. They're being made worse off.
They're worse off because, it's all of these black talking heads like the Michael Eric Dyson and the Cornel West and the Charles Blow and the Joanne Reed, all of Maxine. They keep these young folks.
They made their careers, just talking about the same old regressive stuff.
Racism, but that's all they talk about. I want to say Roland Martin at News One. He, I saw a video. He's talking about, oh yeah, blacks aren't harmed by it. You see, these people are really, really doing a disservice. It's, as I said last week, it's diabolical. It's just something that, we need to get rid of these people. We need to get rid of them. They are destroying Black American.
I agree. And in Black America, there's some people that are awakened. And some people who are waking up, and I hope, that your audience is large and that the people that are listening are not just being entertained. This is not entertainment, folks. This is real life, and you need to take this information. You need to apply it. If you care about your children and grandchildren, this is the hour for action.
I love that. This is the hour for action. In fact, that article that I read earlier, that I mentioned earlier, the article is The Rainbow Coalition Evaporates. This is something that I've come to realize. It said in the article that Martin Luther King Jr. actually embraced this idea of increased immigration. You see, this is why I have got to get off that Martin Luther King thing. Because I feel that he has sold us out to the Democrats. Do you see?
I mean, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, you go down the list of people, and it's just, forget the idea of a black leader. There are interests that affect black people, and black people need to align with the politicians and the people who are actually, doing something different. You just can't keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expect that different results. Following the same people. And yes, the so-called black leaders that you named, the Dyson,
Michael Eric Dyson, yeah.
All these various people, they have benefited so much by the system. And all they do, they get paid to complain about racism. That's what they get paid to do. And as a consequence, a lot of the young people are just stuck in the past. That they are looking in the rearview mirror. They can't go forward because they're looking backwards.
It's a very, very sad state of affairs. I'm hoping that my show can help to enlighten people. I don't know, but it's a very, very sad state of affairs. Anyway, the reason why I'm laughing is I'm looking at this message, but it's a very, very sad state of affairs. And I am going to wait until my engineer comes back because I'd like to take this call, actually. It's from Jennifer in Los Angeles, and she says, you guys are very racist. Why do you target Mexicans? This is going to be very interesting. Jennifer, hello.
Hi, I'm listening to your talk show, radio talk show, and I'm listening to what you're saying. Like, I get it. I'm a legal citizen of the United States, but I'm also, my job is also hurt by illegal people.
It is.
But how you're targeting my culture and, the Latin community and the Hispanic community, the way you're saying it, how you said earlier, we need to get rid of these people. Now you're taking it personal. I want to know why you're saying that.
Well,
you need to fix.
I know what I believe and what I say, and part of what I have said is that legal Hispanics, whites, and blacks are affected by illegal immigration, and so I acknowledge that you're part of the group that's being affected. And when it comes to immigration enforcement, there are a lot of legal immigrants who came here, did it the right way, who are not happy with what took place. And I can't apologize for everything that was said on the show or how it was said, but I'm sure it wasn't meant to, paint with that broad brush everyone who happens to be Hispanic or happens to be an immigrant, because there are many immigrants that are not happy with what's taking place, and they're being hurt by it.
Yeah, but you're saying it as you're only putting a blanket on black and white Caucasian people.
That's not what I'm doing.
You see what you're doing? Yeah, it's exactly what you're doing.
Well, you know what, Jennifer? Jennifer, you know what? Latino is not a race. So when you use the word racism, you're wrong. Okay? Latino, no. And I know how Afro-Latinos.
To what you're saying.
Wait a sec.
Latinos, Hispanics, Salvadorians. I want you to.
That's not a race, dear. That's not a race. That's an ethnicity.
That is an ethnicity, but
that's not. So it's
everyone together. Do you know that there's Chinese people coming here illegally.
Yeah, I want them out too. I want them out too. I want everyone out illegally. I want everyone out illegally. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Thank you, Professor Dr. Carol Swain. I really appreciate you joining me. We'll have you on again. Thank you. Sorry,
all right, thank you.
Sorry, we're leaving abruptly. This is the Naked Truth Report. I'm Kathleen Wells, your host. And let me just say that I'd like you to go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's the Kathleen Wells Show. Go to YouTube, and you can also see videos there. Also, my Facebook page, the Naked Truth Report on Facebook, and my website, The Naked Truth. Please subscribe. Please share the videos. And we are ending the show now with a love song for those with deep roots in America and deep roots in California and deep roots in Los Angeles. This is my love song to people with deep roots in America. Thank you very much. This is the Naked Truth Report.
Show appreciation for the love I gave her through the years. Like a sweet magnolia tree, my love blossomed tenderly. My life grew sweeter through the years.
The Naked Truth Report.